Good morning, everybody. My name is Don Daniel, founder of Pill Method International, a better way to eliminate debt. And today we're going to be talking about how I was ridiculed for this, but AI shut them up. This is part two of a two-part series. We started this last Wednesday, and we're going to get deeper into why there is so much pushback against this idea of paying off mortgages and other debt in about 7 years as opposed to 30 years to never. What are the banks doing? What is the financial system doing to keep us in debt forever? And not only that, but we will argue for the status quo and not because we don't have the best information. There's a reason for all of it. And today we're going to dig down deep into why that is. And I think you want to be here today. All right. Start inviting some other folks in and share our content. Invite other people. Tell your family, tell your friends, get your notepad and note paper ready. We are going to get started right about now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with this because it is, when I start saying this, for some people, it's just too much to take because we have never been taught how amortized loans actually work. And there's a reason for it. But why do we hang on to those ideas for so long with absolutely no evidence? Once you get the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, here's some things that you will know for sure, but they sound like they don't work. Number one, the higher interest rates actually work better than the lower interest rates when you're trying to save money, cut your interest cost so that you can get out of debt faster. All right. Remember that. Never put a large down payment on a mortgage or a car payment. Never do it on a car loan. Don't use large down payments. When you understand how to read an amortization schedule, large down payments actually work against you. All right. Never buy down the interest rate. I know people talk about it, and I know even builders will even buy down your interest rate for you. If a builder offered me to buy down my rate, I'd say no, because there is something else you could do with that money that benefits you more once you understand what's going on. Let's see, what else? What you don't want to do, ladies and gentlemen, what you don't want to do is refinance. Don't refinance your mortgage or any other loan just to get a lower interest rate. That works against you. And today, if we have time, I will tell you about the very best mortgage there is, and it goes against everything that you've ever been taught. The best mortgage there is an interest-only loan for the first 10 years of your mortgage. Wait until you hear everything that an interest-only loan actually offers you. That is one of the most misunderstood financial products on the planet. Oh my gosh. So if you're here in Clubhouse, raise your hand. If you're watching me online, Go ahead and tell me where you're from. Let's start with that. Again, my name is Don Daniel, founder of P.I.L.L Method International, a better way to eliminate debt. And I have a book by the same name. You can find it on Amazon. It has been a bestseller at least 6 times. It could have been more, but I haven't been watching it lately. So please go ahead and follow us on all of our social media. You can go to ice10k.com or ceodon.com or ice10k.com and follow us on all of our social media there. All right. So we just had Bree come into the room. Good morning. So listen, let's find out what is going on with this idea of of why people fight so hard against learning more about finances. And last week we started out with understanding about a gentleman. His name is let's see, Barry. Let's see, what's Barry's last name? Because this is, let me pull up my notes here so that we can go over this right. All right, let's see here. There we go. All right, now I need you to think about this, okay? His name is Barry Marshall, Dr. Barry Marshall from Australia, and he discovered something that practically everybody in the medical community ridiculed him for and said it cannot be true. He discovered what really causes ulcers. When most people, come on up, okay, Rainy. When most people thought that ulcers were caused by stress, okay, most people thought that. He discovered that ulcers were caused by, watch this, a bacteria. And the thinking, the medical thinking at the time, good morning, Rainey, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Excuse me.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, it's rainy, not sunny.
I love it. I love it, Rainey. Okay, so Barry Marshall was ridiculed by the medical community for this one thing. It was believed that no bacteria could live in stomach acid. And that's why he was ridiculed. No one anywhere in the world believed him. I mean, he went to conference and wrote papers, and he went to conference after conference after conference, and he was ridiculed. I need you to read that story. So, and I put the link in last week. So I want to get that link for you guys so that you can read this story for yourselves. So let me pull that up. I'll pull up that article for you. There it is. And copy the link. There we go. And let's see if it copied just fine. And we're going to put you. There it is. Okay. And I'm going to put it online as well. Okay. There we go. This link is to an article about Barry Marshall. And it tells a story about people push back against this idea so badly is for basically for this reason. The way to cure an ulcer before Barry Marshall was surgery. Yeah, they would repair the stomach lining through surgery and fix the ulcer, only to have the ulcer return. And people were suffering and even dying from this when they didn't have to. I mean, Barry said, listen, all we need is an antibiotic. We don't need surgery. And listen, they laughed him to scorn. I'm just telling you. So what did he do? he actually mixed up some of the what they call H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori. That's the bacteria. He mixed it up and drank it. And when he drank it, he gave himself an ulcer. And then they documented everything and cured himself with an antibiotic. Now, this was in the late 70s and early 80s. But do you realize he didn't win a Nobel Prize for this until 2005. It took that long for people to accept the now well-known medical practice of curing an ulcer with the forerunner to Pepto-Bismol. Oh my gosh, that's what we're talking about today. But before that, he was ridiculed and nobody believed him. And so I'm trying to tell you today that a lot of people don't believe this. I've been doing this for 19 years. 19 years. Do I do I have some other hands raised? Come on up, raise your hand, come to the stage. And if you have any questions, I see you, Kwame. All right. Vinny, I see you. Alberto. All right. Listen, if you want to know more about this, come to the stage and we'll talk about it. But last week, I'm going to put this on the screen here so you guys can see what's going on. All right. And if you want to see this, come to YouTube so you can see what we're talking about. And we're going to share the screen. There we go. And we're going to be breaking some of this down for you today. All right. In detail. So here is the first thing that we're talking about. This is where we left off last week. All right. But we ran out of time. It's called Wysiati. These are concepts that that these phrases were coined by behavioral economists. And when you study economics and psychology together, it's called behavioral economics. So when you this is one of the things that they discovered. Wysiati, it stands for what you see is all there is. How many times have you met, how many people have you run into that will fiercely defend the point that they have from their point of view? And from their point of view, ladies and gentlemen, they are exactly right. But they don't know what they don't know. And they're saying here, now, what is it? It assumes information currently available is all that matters or exists. And it ignores hidden or missing variables in complex decisions. When it comes to your debt, when it comes to finances, they are very, and I mean very complex. We have been conditioned to think that they are simple, like to pay off a mortgage or a credit card or any other debt. We've been told just pay more. That's all you have to do, just pay more. But what we are doing, ladies and gentlemen, our whole goal is not to pay the debt off faster. It never has been. But we haven't been told that. So what do you mean, Don? Isn't the idea of paying off the debt, you want to pay it off as fast as you can? Actually, no. You don't want to do that. What you really want to do is based on this question I'm getting ready to ask you. If all of your debt was 0% interest, is there any financial benefit to paying the debt off early? Put it in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in the comment section. Put your answer there. If all of your debt, your mortgages, your student loans, your credit cards, your car loans, every single type of debt there is, if it was all 0% interest, is there any financial benefit to you to paying it off? Katrina Perkins says no. And she's watching us on YouTube this morning. Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate you for that. All right. She says no, absolutely not. It isn't. And so why then does every single financial guru, everybody on the internet, when they're talking about debt, they're focused on how to pay back the principal? And the principal is the money that you borrow. How fast can we pay that off? What number do we have to come up with? People call us all the time and ask us, how much should I pay on my debt every month to get rid of it the fastest? But if they only knew that the reason why you're in long-term debt is the cost of managing the debt. It's the interest cost that keeps you in debt forever. So the thing to do is to manage interest cost. You want to lower your cost on the interest you have to pay. So more of the money that you already make, will go to pay off the debt. So you don't need more money, ladies and gentlemen. What you need is increased information. And one of the things you need is how mortgage mechanics actually work. Now, mortgage mechanics, loan mechanics, it doesn't really matter, okay? The mechanics of it, you want to know, what is it that they're doing? What is it that they're doing that turns a 3% loan into a 50% loan? Okay. I see you, Dion. Don't be sneaking in here. You need to be up on this stage. Okay. Don't think I don't see you. You need to raise your hand and come on up here. All right. So let's stick with Wise the Addy for a few minutes. All right. And help people to understand that what they think they know, they think that's all there is, and they argue or they talk from that perspective. But when you do that, it shuts yourself off from new and better information. She says, I forgot how to use this app. Okay, let me invite you up here. I'm going to invite you to speak, and you just answer, just there you go. And then follow the directions and come on up. All right. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I want to put some things on the screen. All right. And let's go here. I'm going to put Mr. Brett Whistle on the screen again. And we're going to talk about some things. All right. Here is a 200. No, we're going to do a 400,000. Okay. A 400,000. Okay. All right. We're going to do a $400,000 mortgage at 3%. Okay. And we're just going to work this thing up. All right. Now, how you doing, Dion? How's everything?
Yeah, good morning, Don. It's going well. I'm on the East Coast.
Okay.
For a few more until tomorrow, and then back to the West Coast.
Back to the West Coast. Okay. All right. Listen, you can talk about anything you want to talk about today. You can interrupt me at any time. I love it when we get questions and comments. Okay. All right. So, folks, we have a $400,000 mortgage at 3%. Now, everybody is thinking, I had somebody I'm talking about, they argued me down. I mean, they just couldn't let this thing go. It was like a dog with a bone. In fact, they have a 2.1 interest rate. And this is, now, why would I want to do anything with a 2.1 interest rate? Okay. I'm just going to keep it. He's a real estate investor. And because of this idea of Wise the Addy, what you see is all there is. He was saying that this let's put that in first. 2.1, okay? 2.1 interest rate. And on a $400,000 loan, the payment is $1,498.56. That is the payment. So he says, if I have a 2.1 interest rate, I mean, I'm not going to get better than that. why should I try to pay that off early because I can borrow money at 2.1? Well, let's take a look at it. So $400,000. If you take a look at $400,000, here's how much interest they want. $139,481.60. Folks, that's not 2% of 400,000. You know what that is? That's 34%. So its 2.1 interest rate really is 34.870%. So another thing that people do when it comes to economics, they do mental accounting. Mental accounting will oftentimes lead you astray. They're doing mental accounting and saying, if I have 2.1, but if I invest my money, I can make 10%, 15%, and sometimes even 20% on my money. Why would I, if I could borrow money at 2%, why would I ever do anything with that? I can take my money and make more money with it than I could save by doing that. Okay. So come on up. I see you, Ken. Come on up here. All right. Got Ken in the house. Ken, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great this morning. I'm great. I got 3 graduations. So I'm busy today.
Okay. All right, man. Well, listen, I'm glad you're here. So if you see anybody wants to come up to the stage, can you invite them up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I appreciate that, man. So now this guy was saying he wasn't thinking about the fact that it was 34% that he's paying to the bank, and it's even higher in the early years. Can I show you what I mean by the fact that how much interest he was actually paying and didn't even realize it? And this is a real estate investor. All real estate investors I've ever met are throwing away millions of dollars because of this, because they don't do the math. They're trying to do an opportunity cost calculation with mental accounting without actually writing it down and looking at the numbers. They're making a judgment call, an intuitive decision, thinking that, well, 2% has to save me money so I can turn around and make 10% when I invest. Well, that's an intuitive decision. That's not a math decision. And most of us make intuitive decisions when it comes to our finances. That's why we stay in debt forever. And the banks understand that, play on that. That keeps us in debt forever because we're making intuitive decisions when we should be making math decisions. So let me show you what this means. Okay, so we have on this payment here, even at 2%. Watch this. At 2%, at 2.1%, the payment is $1,498.56. Very affordable. He's charging more rent than this, so the property is cash flowing. So it makes perfect sense not to mess with it if you understand it the way he understood it. But let's break it down the way the bank understands it, okay? So the amount when he pays that money, his payment of $1,498.56. Let me make a note of that. $1,498.56. When he makes that payment, here's what happens to it. $700 of it goes to interest. And $798.56 pays down the loan. What? That's at 2%. What's really going on behind the scenes that we're not taught to pay attention to? This part. I'm going to put a calculator on the screen and we're going to break this down. All right, where's my calculator? All right, there it is. And let's put that on the screen. There it is. So our first interest cost is $700. Okay. So we will divide that by our total payment of $1498.56 divided by 1498.56. That gives us 46%, 0.467. And you have, and since the third number is a 7, you have to round up the 6 to 7. So 47%. 47%. That first payment, he's paying 47% of his money is going to interest. Folks, that's a 47% interest rate all day. I don't care what you say. If I've got to pay $1,498 of the money my tenant gave me, and then I got to give away $700, how is that desirable? Okay, I'm thinking 2% the whole time, and I'm focused on how much money I'm making after I pay the mortgage. That's where I'm focused. I am not focused on the fact that my tenant gave me enough money in 1 year. Watch this. I'm not focused on the fact that my tenant gave me $1,498, okay, and 56 cents times 12. I'm not focused on that. My tenant gave me enough money, $17,982.72. Now, every real estate expert out there, everybody who's into using real estate as a way of making money, as investment property, will look at this and say, all right, what are my costs and what am I renting it for? And the main cost that they're looking at is, what is the mortgage payment? So if the mortgage payment, let's call it $1,500, and if I can rent it for $2,000, that's $500 cash flow every single month for that. Okay. Anybody got any questions or comments? Anybody on the stage have any comments about that? Okay. At all. And if you want to come to the stage, raise your hand, come to the stage. And if you want to see what we're talking about, go to YouTube. And once you get there, do not forget to subscribe. All right. Go to YouTube and watch this. So out of nearly $18,000, only $9,675.50 of that money your tenant gave you pays down the loan. In other words, this is your potential equity. And that's what the gurus are teaching. Your tenant is growing your equity. But out of the nearly $18,000 they gave you, okay, only $9,675.50 of it is helping you. And you don't have to do that. Here is what we're doing, ladies. I need you, let's break this down the way the bank does not want you to see this. We start out at $400,000 and payment on our original mortgage, right? $400,000. And in 1 year, we pay it down to $390,324.50. Do you see that? $390,324.50. But if we pay the bank monthly the way they want us to pay it on time, okay, how much does it cost us of the money our tenants give us? How much money does it cost us to get there? $8,307.22. That's how much money goes up in smoke that we don't get to use. The bank gets to use that. They keep that money. The investor that bought the mortgage gets to keep that money. $8,307.22. So if I continue to think that this 2% loan is actually helping me, I'm looking at this. This is nearly 50% of my money gone. And I'm taught to think of it as, no, this is my tenant's money. Nope. That's not my tenant's money anymore. once the tenant pays the rent, that's my money. That's your money. Once the tenant pays you, that's your money. And what are you doing? Giving nearly 50% of it away because we have not been taught how to read an amortization schedule. Now, I just need you to put something in the chat and say, do you want to continue? Do you want to continue to give your money away like that? Talk to me, everybody. Put it in the chat. Somebody say something, okay? Now, I want to show you this. This is how much money goes to principal. This is all your principal payments added up right here. All your principal payments added up. It comes to $96.75.50. I am not suggesting that somebody do this. I'm just showing the mortgage mechanics. I'm paying down my loan by $9,675.50 in 1 year. But what if I had that money already? What if I've been in a real estate investor for some time and I have some cash built up and I've got it sitting in the bank, making 1/10 of 1%. But if I have this money, could I give this money, $9,675.50? Could I give this money to the mortgage company or to the bank in the very first month and be paid down to line 12 in 1 month? I'm not suggesting that this is the P.I.L.L. method. What I am saying is that when we understand mortgage mechanics, we can make different decisions. Now, this is just a suggestion for informational purposes. So let's put our calculator back on the screen and subtract 400,000 from 400,000. Okay. We're going to subtract 9,675. Okay. $9,675.50 equals $390,324.50. Okay. So I've just suggested a couple of different ways. We can make every single payment the bank wants us to make. Okay. 1 through 12. And pay the loan down to $390,000. Or we could give the bank the $9,675.50 all on line 1 and get paid down to here in 1 month. My question is, if it's possible to get to the same point. Now, the idea is to pay off the loan, is to pay down the loan. If I can get here in 1 month, that means I skip all the interest payments between line 2 and line 12 that I never have to pay. So my question to you is, if I can give the bank the same amount of money and pay interest of $700 instead of $8,307.22, can anybody who is a real estate investor or even a homeowner with this loan, can anybody justify why we should give away $8,300 just to pay the loan down by $9,675, just to get down to line 12 on our amortization schedule? If we had this money available, if we had the money available, does it make sense to pay the bank $8,300 interest when we could have paid them $700 interest? Does that, I just need you all to start thinking about why the banks have conditioned us to think this way. All right. So now let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this next point. Okay. Status quo bias. A bias is a way of thinking that is so strong that we tend not to want to change it. Okay, the status quo bias. Now, if you want to look that up, I'm going to copy that status quo bias, copy it, and we're going to, let's see here, bring this back, give me a new tab. And so that you can see that it is something real and not that I've just made up, I'm pasting it into Google. All right, there it is. Status quo bias is a cognitive bias. It describes a preference for a current state of affairs and a resistance to change, even when other options might be better. It's a preference for keeping things the same. If it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. The people who lend you money hire psychologists to keep you in this state of mind. Let's take a look at what else it says here. Preferring the current state of affairs, even when better options exist, avoids change due to fear or discomfort, sticks with inefficient debt strategies. We will stick with inefficient debt strategies as long as we have a debt strategy, because to do this thing right takes a lot of brain power. It takes a lot of sitting it down and working it out. We would much rather take heuristics or a rule of thumb and do things and come up with a simple solution that doesn't require a lot of brain power, but it seems logical to us. How about that? So here's another one. Overconfidence bias. Overconfidence bias. Overestimating one's knowledge or decision-making abilities. All right. Let's see if we can get more information on this particular bias by going back to, let's go back to Google. We're going to paste this one in. All right, overconfidence bias. All right. Overconfidence bias is a cognitive bias where individuals overestimate their abilities, knowledge, or judgment. This basis causes people to be more confident than their skills or understanding warrant. The longer you've been doing something, the more confident you are that the stuff that you're doing is the right thing to do. And if you've been in this business or in any business for a number of years, it's going to be harder to listen to somebody who's coming up with a new idea. Not only will you want to stick to your own idea, but you will argue vehemently against new ideas when they're popping up. I need you to think about this for a minute, folks. Think about this for a minute. And try to imagine a world. Close your eyes and try to imagine a world where only toaster ovens exist. Everybody has a toaster oven. Everybody knows how to work a toaster oven. Everybody knows how hot a toaster oven can get. Everybody has been burned by a toaster oven by not being careful, all right? Getting the toast out of a toaster oven. Now, try to imagine somebody coming along and introducing to you a microwave oven. The whole world knows nothing about microwaves. Everybody understands how a toaster oven works. Now, you come along and say, in my microwave oven, and you're all excited about it. All right. And one of the things that you've discovered because of how a microwave oven heats up things, I can put a plastic bowl of water in my microwave oven and heat that water to boiling. Now, you know it to be true because you've done it. You have an idea of how microwave technology works. But now you're trying to help people to change their minds about a new technology and add, not trying to replace the toaster oven. You're just trying to add a new device. And one of the things that you're talking about is heating a plastic bowl of water to boiling. Everybody that understands toaster ovens will say what about that? What will they say? It cannot be done. It is impossible because the plastic bowl will melt in any type of oven that I've ever seen in my entire life. Do you see where that bias can get us? It cannot work. Bacteria cannot live in stomach acid. That's what Barry Marshall was told. This cannot work this way because of the information that I currently have. Folks, does that make, are you seeing what banking is doing to us by causing us to think this way? And they call it, it's not anchoring. What do they call it? Hold on, I've got some other notes here. Priming. They prime us with the education. They prime us with the advertising to think a certain way about our money. And even when we think we're saving money, when we think we're doing the right thing, they're making a ton of money hand over fist, because even a 2% mortgage, even a 2% mortgage is 34.87%. What if it's a 3% mortgage? Okay, which is still fairly low. Most people would say, listen, if they offer me a 3%, I'd jump on it with both feet. That makes the payment $1,686. But most people aren't realizing that if I borrow $400,000 at 3%, and if I follow what most real estate investors are doing, they're not putting an extra dime on principal. That means $207,111 goes to interest. That is over half. That's 51.778%. All 3% mortgages are 51% mortgages, and we're not taught to think of it that way. All right? Let's go to 4%. Let's take a look at that. 4%. This is mind-boggling to some people. 4% mortgage, they want $287,000 interest. That makes it 71.869%. A 71% mortgage. You see, when they're doing their math, okay, they're saying they're trying to equate a 4% mortgage with a 10 or 15% return on their money. If I can get 10 or they're equating 10 or 15% compounded interest with 4% amortized interest. And when you amortize it, it becomes 71.869%. And in the early months, it's even more than that. It averages out over 30 years to be 71.869%. This is what we're into. This is what we're conditioned to think. All right. So now that's 4%. Well, we might as well go to 5 and take a look at it. All right. So now that takes our payment to $2147.29. But look at this. For $400,000 borrowed, the bank wants you to pay back $373,024.40. Folks, that's nearly half. I mean, no, that's not half. That's nearly 100%. They want me to borrow $400,000, pay back $373,000 in interest for a total payback of $773,000. Folks, if you have a 5% loan, do you want to buy one house for you and one house for the bank, giving them over $373,000 interest on a $400,000 loan, and all the while you're thinking it's 5%, when in actuality it's 93.256%. That's what we're conditioned to think. Well, we're going to do two more. Now we're looking at 6%. Okay. Uh-oh, I clicked the wrong thing. 6%. There it is. $2,398.20. That's what $400,000 is at 6%. Here's how much interest they want, $463,000. Actually, now they want more interest than we borrowed in principal for a total payback of $863,000. Folks, that's 115.838%. Not even payday loans charge that. But somebody with perfect credit is doing this. Somebody who has perfect credit and they're a real estate investor who has been told that you don't need to do anything to this loan. They're paying 115% interest and they're not even realizing it, and they don't have to. You don't have to do this. But we're conditioned to do it. And not only that, we're conditioned to argue against the change. How about that? Okay, let's do one more because that's where we are now. We are at 7% interest. 7% interest. Take this payment out, $2,300. Now the payment is $2,661.21. On a $400,000 loan, the bank wants $558,000. That makes it 139.5%. Does anybody want to pay 139.5% interest on a loan? But they will pay 7 because we're conditioned to think 7. If that's the prevailing interest rate, and we're either investing or we're buying a home for ourselves. If that's what's being offered, we'll buy it. And then we're taught to think about it a certain way. Now, how many people are looking at this? How many people are looking at this? And they're conditioned to think that 7 or 6 or 8% is a high interest rate and therefore undesirable. A high interest rate is undesirable. How many have been taught to think that? Because listen, I hear it on the news all the time. The higher the interest rate, and everybody is moaning and groaning. But I need you to think about this right now. If you have a high interest rate and you can afford the payment, you're better off there than you are at the lower interest rate if you understand mortgage mechanics. If you understand mortgage mechanics, you're better off at the higher rate than you are at the lower rate. Why is that? Because you want to lower your principal payment, not your interest rate. One more time, you want to lower your principal payment, not your interest rate, because of what we've been taught. Let's start here. We're going to go all the way back to our 2% mortgage. All right, let me get rid of some of this advertising here. Okay, our 2% mortgage, and I need you to see the principal payment. The principal payment is $798.56. Because of how the loan is calculated, if you want to make every single payment, then you want the lowest interest rate available. But if you're trying to save interest, that means you want to give the bank money where it makes it impossible for them to charge you interest. That is the idea of interest cancellation. How can I give the bank back the money that I borrowed and make it impossible for them to charge me interest. Here's some of the mortgage mechanics. This is still not the P.I.L.L method, but it helps us to understand how mortgages work, all right? The mechanics behind it. If I have my mortgage payment here and I prepay the principal on line 2, which is $799.96, that's at 2%. I do not have to pay the $698.60 worth of interest to pay my loan down to here. I immediately jump to line 3. Okay. But if I make my regular mortgage payment and give them an extra $799.96, I completely wipe out all of this interest. If I prepay something less, I will wipe out part of this interest, which will still be okay. All right. Wiping out interest is wiping out interest. It's going to be good. But if I want to wipe out a whole interest payment, I got to come up with an additional $799.96. In other words, the more interest I save, the faster I'm out of debt. The more interest I pay, the longer I stay in debt. So if my amortization schedule makes my principal payment larger, my money does less work for me in saving interest. Does that make sense? Watch. If I'm looking at wiping out interest, let's take a whole year's worth. Because all the principal payments here, all right, add up to $9,675.50. If I prepay this, it knocks off 1 year. I could prepay $9,600 and knock off 1 year. But what if I could pay less than that to knock off 1 year? Would that be advantageous? If I could pay less than $9,600 at one time and kill 1 whole year off my mortgage, if I could pay less, would that be better? All right, put it in the chat. Okay, if you're watching me online, all right, say something about that. All right, if you're here in Clubhouse, say something about that. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the 3% loan. Okay, when we take a look at the 3% loan, I need you to see this. My principal payment just dropped down to $686, $688. Compare that with the 2.1% loan, where my principal payment is $798, $799. To get rid of line 2, I got to come up with $799.96, almost $800. But when I raise the interest rate to 3%, now I can come up with $688 to do the same thing. When I lower the principal payment, I can kill more debt faster when I lower the principal payment. And to lower the principal payment, I have a higher interest rate. Okay? Tisha Cole says, she's watching this. Okay? Tisha Cole, watching us on Facebook, says, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Okay? Tisha, thank you for that. Okay? Somebody online on here, Rainey, says, you are targeting principal reduction with discipline. That's right. Hey, that's right, Rainey. What we're doing is understanding the mechanics of it for the first time, because this is not taught anywhere at any level of financial education. We are given rules of thumb or heuristics to do mental accounting, and we think we are doing right by ourselves because we do some thinking about it. We just don't do enough because we have not been introduced to more variables. We haven't been introduced. We're making decisions based on the information we know. Wisey Hattie, what you see is all there is. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the 4%. Watch this. Okay, So we did 2, we did 3, now we're at 4. All right. Uh-oh. Principal payment is down to 5. Okay. Principal payment is down to $578. I want to show you one whole year on the first 3. Watch this. One whole year on the first 3. At 2%, I have to come up with $9,600 to wipe out one year. At 3%, all I have to do is come up with $8,300 to wipe out one year. And at 4%, $7,444.15 at one time wipes out 1 year on this mortgage. Can anybody tell me that $7,000 to wipe out 1 year is not better than $9,600 to wipe out 1 year? So Tisha Cole says, no, never heard it before. Never heard of this before. Why, Tisha? It isn't because you weren't. It wasn't because you weren't paying attention in class. Tisha, there was no class on this. The most ubiquitous financial tool on the planet is the interest-bearing loan, or the loan that creates interest for the investor or the bank. We've never been taught this because people make a lot of money on it. And when we misunderstand it, mortgage mechanics, they make even more money, even when we think we're doing our best. You know how many people have come up to me and said, Don, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, they're doing everything they think they know. And what they're thinking is, I'm doing the same thing. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, at the P.I.L.L. method, everything you know, we're doing the exact opposite on everything you already know. The exact opposite. It is not the same by any stretch of the imagination here at the P.I.L.L. method. Not at all. And Don, where did you get this? How do you know this and it's not taught anywhere? Who taught you? Let's talk about that for a minute. I have what's called autism spectrum disorder. When I look at an amortization schedule, I see the pictures and the patterns. So nobody taught it to me. And what started out while I was in school started out as a true deficit, started out as something that caused me great pain and anguish. I soon found out, I found out later in life that God gave me this because the way that I look at an amortization schedule, I see the patterns that most people do not see. And I've spent the last 19 years helping other people to see it. Okay. Let's see. Does this work for car loans and personal loans? So somebody's asking this. Okay. Does this work for car loans and personal loans? Yes, it does. Okay. If they're charging interest, it works. You want to make sure that when you're using the P.I.L.L. method, you need to learn as much as you can about the P.I.L.L. method. We're going to be coming up soon with the P.I.L.L. method challenge on becoming an interest cancellation expert. We're working on this right now. We're going to spend 5 whole days with you, helping you to understand this from beginning to end. I mean, in detail, so that you can become an interest cancellation expert. We're going to give you a college level course in just 5 days on how this works. Be ready for it. We're going to start announcing it soon. Okay. So now we did 2, 3, 4. Okay. 2, 3, 4. Here, let's take a look at 5%. 5% interest, ladies and gentlemen, 5%. Look at the principal payment. It's down to $482 to get rid of one line. But Don, look at the interest. It's so much higher at 5%. Well, folks, I need you to start thinking in a different vein. I need you to start thinking this way. Control the principal payment and you control the loan. Interest payments you skip don't matter. So if I can prepay $5,900, I can knock off 1 year off this loan. 1 year is gone, and I kill $18,000 worth of interest. Okay? 1 year. Okay. So even when I'm attacking the loan aggressively, will I pay a little bit more interest in the beginning? Yes, I will. But when it's all said and done, will I have saved more interest and more time at the higher interest rate and at the lower than at the lower rate? If I am strategic in paying off my debt, is there a way to focus on paying the right amount at the right time? And folks, we've been here 1 hour. And so I need to take a break right quick. Watch this video for me while we take a break here. All right. And I thank you for being here. You are watching the P.I.L.L Method podcast. I'm your host, Don Daniel, and we are the better way to eliminate debt. And today we are going over how and why I was ridiculed for this and how AI shut them up. All right. So watch this video and we'll be right back. How many want to know how to pay off all of your debt in an average of 7 to 9 years? You can do all of this without refinancing, without change to your budget, without sacrificing lifestyle.
Me and my husband do the P.I.L.L method, and last year we were able to pay down $33,000 on our mortgage without feeling like we were poor. We still did tons of entertaining things and enjoyed our family.
You don't have to eat beans and rice every day. You don't have to cut up your credit cards. You don't have to drive a 30-year-old car. You don't have to sell pizzas at night to pay off your mortgage. All you need to do is pay the bank less interest. That's what we're talking about today. Here is what P.I.L.L method stands for: prepayment of principal, isolation of principal amounts, leverage, and liquidity. You understand it? You have a way of getting out of debt more efficiently. The interest rate you're quoted is not the interest rate you pay. You think you're buying a $500,000 home. The true cost of that home is what? $758,000. Total interest paid as a percentage of principal, 51.777%. That's what's going on with this loan. The ability to read and defeat an amortization schedule is not taught at any level of financial education. I need you to understand the power of a penny. You will not hear what I'm talking about from Dave Ramsey. Do you know why? Because I own the copyright. I literally wrote the book.
But Don has some valuable information that can contribute to the quality of a person's life. And it only costs you a few dollars. It's his book. Why not get that?
I'm going to go through the P.I.L.L method myself with some of my investment properties. So I'm going to link up with Don, and then I'm going to sit down with him, show him my investment portfolio, and see how I can eliminate interest.
All right, folks, we're back. If you will go to ice10k.com, ice10k.com, that will bring you to my digital business card. And listen, you can go down to where it says get a savings and earnings report. Click on that button and it will take you to this page. How would you like to know the month, day, and year you could be debt free? How would you like to get your hands on a cloud-based computing platform that acts like a financial GPS that tells you exactly how much to pay, when to pay with your current budget, so that you can pay 75 to 80% less interest than you need to pay. Cut off 75 to 80% of that interest, and therefore more of your money goes to principal. If you'd like to know the month, day, and year you could be debt free by not having to make more money, but by paying less interest, go to ice10k.com and click on that button that says get a savings and earnings report today. All right, so we're back, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. So we've already done 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to 6%, 6%, ladies and gentlemen. All right, look at this, $463,000 in interest, but look at my principal payment, $400. $400. It only takes $4,900 at 6% to knock out 1 year on this loan. Has anybody ever pointed that out to you before? $4,900 paid one time kills 1 year on this loan and saves you a whole ton of interest. And at 7%, oh my gosh, 7%, look at this. 327,000 for, let's see, is this 7%? Let me take a look. Yep, 7% interest, $4,063. At 6% is $4,900. At 7% is $4,063. Pays down 1 year on this loan. Can I show you something absolutely ridiculous? Absolutely ridiculous. Somebody, I heard on somebody else's podcast that because they're a real estate investor, to make a deal work, they had to accept an 18% interest rate on a multifamily deal. They got a multifamily deal, got a great deal on it, but they had to accept 18% to make it work. Now, it's still cash flow, but they were distressed about an 18% loan. Can I show you what they had to go through? So we're going to bring this up. Brett Whistle again. Come on, Brett. Talk to me. Okay. $200,000 on this multifamily. Great deal on it at 18%. I need you to look at this for 30 years. I need you, based on what you've learned so far. This is what being open to new information can do for you. You don't see things the same way. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when it comes to this, ladies and gentlemen, don't try to explain this to people. Okay, you're going to get the same resistance that I received. You're going to get the same resistance that Barry Marshall received with such radical and new information. If people aren't looking at the numbers, they can't see this. They have to see the numbers. Okay, so point them to our videos here on YouTube. Besides, all of you on YouTube, please subscribe. All right. And click that notification bell, because every time we come back here, we want to give you brand new and good information. This is a real estate investor. And once I got this information, I did another show on this to show them you're probably not in such a bad situation after all. And they were thinking they need to refinance out of this. You tell me if they need to refinance out of this or not, if it's already cash flowing. All right, here's the payment, $3,014.17 on a multifamily, and they are making money. All right, they're already making money because it's, I can't remember if it's a 4-unit or a 6-unit, but they were charging enough rent to more than cover this mortgage payment. But I need to show you how the payment breaks down. And I need you to think to yourself, let's get rid of this advertising. I need you to think to yourself, what's going on here? What in the world is going on here? Can you see what's going on at this 18% loan? And if you don't know how to read this, would this distress you? Listen, if you're new to the room here on Clubhouse, you need to go to YouTube right now, look up P.I.L.L method, or click the link at the top of the page. You need to see this. All right. I need everybody to comment on this right here. What do you see now that you couldn't see at the top of this show? What are you looking at? Your eyes are not drawn to the interest rate or the interest payment. Your eyes are drawn to the teeny tiny principal payment because, and you're asking yourself, is it true that if I make this mortgage payment here on line 1, all I have to do is come up with $14.38 to eliminate line 2 on this mortgage schedule, and I jump immediately to line 3? You better believe it. Does that mean if I pay my mortgage on line 1 and I give the bank the next 3 principal payments, $14.38, 1460 and 1482, I eliminate 3 mortgage payments I never have to make, and I eliminate nearly $9,000 in interest I never have to pay with oh my gosh, with about 45 bucks. 45 bucks saves me nearly $9,000 on this thing. Or are you looking at one whole year on this where $184.79 prepaid up front on line 1 knocks off a whole year on this mortgage? Or are you scrolling down? If you're using Brett Whistle here, B-R-E-T, the guy's name is B-R-E-T-W-H-I-S-S-E-L. This is this isn't my program. This is a teaching tool that I use. It's an online calculator, but it gives you information that other amortization schedules don't give you. 2 years prepaid, $405. 3 years prepaid, $669. $985, less than $1,000 knocks off 4 years off this mortgage and saves $143,000 in interest you never have to pay. That, my friends, is amazing, and that is mind-boggling, and that is why some people hang on to old information, because this information isn't just slightly different. It is exceptionally different. It is a lot different. It is so different, it boggles the mind. That's why listen, Katrina, I'm with you. Katrina says, wow, look at this. Nobody ever pointed this out before. Can you imagine somebody getting equity at a much lower cost and knocking off this loan years and years and years faster because they have a high interest rate rather than a lower one, because they've learned now how to read an amortization schedule and they don't have to fall subject to biases, okay? Like the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect works like this, ladies and gentlemen. Low-skill individuals overestimating their talent or competence. Okay, they ignores complexity and assumes simplicity. We assume that these mortgages are simple. We assume that all we have to do is pay more, and assumes they don't need help with loans. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Well, listen, does it really mean that? Let's look it up. Let's look it up. Dunning-Kruger effect, so that you don't think that I'm making up these terms, okay? Let's put this in here, the Dunning-Kruger effect. All right, so we're going to paste it and do that. All right, let's look it up. The Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where individuals with low competence in a specific area tend to overestimate their abilities, while those with high competence may underestimate their true abilities. This effect, named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, highlights a disconnect between self-perception and actual competence. We believe with this Dunning-Kruger effect, because we do something for a long time, or we've been studying it, even subject matter experts like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman will shut themselves off to newer information based on the fact that they've been doing this a number of years and there's nothing else to learn. What about that? The Dunning-Kruger effect. There are banking institutions that hire psychologists to anchor us here so that we will not think that there's anything new under the sun. And there's definitely is something new under the sun. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at number 5 here. Confirmation bias. Have you heard of confirmation bias? Confirmation bias means that we look for evidence that confirms what we already believe to be true. So have you had those people who look and they ignore all other evidence, but they highlight the evidence that says, this is what I believe. All right. I'm confirming what I already believe. Listen, like I'm watching the news, and this guy in the White House, oh my gosh, this guy in the White House, all right, trying to embarrass the president of South Africa with made up news articles, videos that are not even in the guy's country, and saying all of this that I'm showing you means that there's genocide going on in your country, and here's all the evidence. Folks, that is a classic example of confirmation bias. Do you know anybody that does that? And so here's all the evidence I was able to find that proves what I'm saying is true. And they ignore all other evidence. Okay? It's favoring information that supports existing beliefs. You already have the belief. So now I'm only going to look for or accept information that supports that belief. Searches only for validating data, disregards interest-saving data or tools. How about that? Well, this is, I'm set this up for the P.I.L.L method, of course. Of course. Okay. All right. Now, what about belief preservation? Let me take a look at this. Belief preservation. All right. Let's take a look at this. All right. 6. All right. Oh man, I've got 13 of these. But we only had 6. Okay. Belief. Let me copy that. All right. Copy it. All right. Let me put this in and see if we can come up with the right information, because it cut it off. I need you to see this. Okay. And return. Okay. These are the results for belief perseverance. Clinging to beliefs even after they've been disproved. Clinging to beliefs after they've been disproved. Resist changing opinions even with new facts. Keeps refinancing or overpaying unknowingly. How about that? Keeps refinancing or overpaying unknowingly. Belief preservation, belief perseverance, rather. Belief perseverance. Clinging to something even though there is overwhelming proof that we need to change. Folks, this, more than anything, is what we have to deal with. The described behavior is an example of belief perseverance, a cognitive bias where individuals hold on to their initial beliefs even when presented with contradictory evidence. This can lead to a clinging to disproven beliefs, resisting new facts, and potentially making decisions that are not in one's best interest, such as unknowingly overpaying or refinancing. What about that, ladies and gentlemen? What about that? Are we going to continue to hang on to stuff that doesn't work in our favor only because we've not been taught the right way? Oh my gosh. All right, so listen. I think I've spent a good amount of time here, but I promise to show you the benefit of an interest-only loan once you understand this, because we're going to go over some of the benefits of a new mindset and what it can mean for you. Okay, so let me see. I think I have an article here. Let me see if I can find it. Interest only. Let me see if I can find an article here on the interest only mortgage. All right, there it is. Here's a link. Okay. Now, I told you before that if you understand interest only mortgages, it is probably the very best mortgage there is. I'm going to bring up a whole new window here. Okay. And we're going to put this link in. And let me see if you recognize this bank. Okay. Chase Bank. What is an interest only mortgage? So that you don't think you've got to go to some obscure bank to get one. Most banks offer this, but most people misunderstand it. So they're not really putting it front and center when it comes to their advertising. But let's take a look at it, okay? How interest only works, okay? An interest only loan works like this. They're usually variable rate mortgages, okay, or an ARM. They're usually variable rate, and the payment term is usually around 10 years, where you can pay interest only on a mortgage. So let's take a look at it step by step. All right. So I'm going to bring up Brett Whistle again. We're going to use our $400,000 mortgage again. Okay. Our $400,000 mortgage, we're going to do 6.5% this time. All right, there we go. Now let's take a look at the interest only payment. Interest only is $2,166.67. That is the interest only payment. Okay, that means that is the minimum payment you can make. It doesn't mean it's the only payment you can make. Interest only does not mean you can only pay interest. What it does mean is that your minimum payment is interest. Now, let's take a look at this thing. All right. So why get an interest only mortgage? If you're interested in keeping your month-to-month housing costs low, an interest only loan may be a good option. All right. If you're interested in keeping your monthly payment low, that could be a good option for you. But Don, during the interest only payment, if you pay interest only, what does that mean? Especially when you do it for 10 years. Here's what it means. If you only pay interest for the first 10 years on this loan, okay, you will pay. Let me go down to line 120. Okay. There it is, first 10 years. You will pay $242,000 in interest on this loan, and you'll still owe $400,000. That's what it could mean, but that's not what it should mean. You could do that, but you don't have to do that. Here's what's great about an interest-only loan. Your payment is a minimum payment of interest only. So instead of 25, 28, 27, you could pay 21, 66, 67, but that doesn't prevent you from putting money on principal anyway. So think about it this way, folks. If your interest only payment is based on how much you owe, but you start putting money on principal early, will you not lower the amount that you owe? If you lower the amount that you owe and you're doing interest only payments as a minimum payment, will that affect what your payment will be after you prepay? If you put money on principal, will that lower how much you owe? If it does, it will lower how much your minimum payment will be. This is the ultimate in control over cash flow, ladies and gentlemen. The ultimate control over cash flow, paying principal when you want to and make it impossible for the bank to charge you interest. Okay, watch this. Here's what I mean. Here's what I mean. It's about taking control of your amortization schedule. Okay, Rainey, there you are. Okay, that's what Rainey says. It's about taking control of your amortization schedule. You are exactly right. Okay, so now what if I decide instead of just paying the interest only payment, I'm going to give them $4,400, and this is my new mortgage amount. It's not $400,000. I owe now $395,000. Okay, let me show you how that works. Okay, they're taking. In fact, it's going to be easier if I do this. Okay, I'm going to change this to 6%. Okay, because the math works out better. Okay, watch this. At 6%, the payment is $2,398. The interest only payment is $2,000. Do you see that? You can pay $2,000, all right, but it's based on $400,000. If I, in the first year, give the bank, I can give them $4,900 up front. Apply that to principal. I'm going to make my regular mortgage payment and give them an extra $4,900. So I'm paid down to here. So my new mortgage payment is based on this amount, not the $400,000. And here's how they figure it out. Okay, let's bring up my calculator. They take 6%. Okay, this is how the bank does it. 0.06%. They divide this number by 12. Divide it by 12. And each month they take this amount, 0.005, and multiply it by the unpaid balance. If the unpaid balance is $400,000, then every month the payment is $2,000. Let's give it a try. We're going to multiply it by 400,000. That's the original amount. Okay, that's 40,000. All right, there you go. Look at there, $2,000. $2,000. That's the very first interest payment is right there, and that means that's the minimum you could pay. All right, but if you prepay $4,912, there's nothing to keep you from doing that. You give that to the bank. Now your payment is based on $395,000. Okay, $87.98. So let's put that in our calculator. Okay, so $395,000 0.87.98, all right, times 0.005. When you take your 6% and divide it by 12, you get 0.005, and we're going to multiply it by our new principal balance of $395,000. It comes to, oh, look here. Now my payment is $1,975.44. $1,975.44. That becomes my new mortgage payment. You are complete control, not over on your mortgage payment, but if this is a rental property, if this is investment property, now you are in complete control of your cash flow. You can increase cash flow with a interest only mortgage without increasing the rent. Whew. It makes me tired just thinking about it. I absolutely love this. What about you? Okay. What if we end up giving them $10,000? What if we give them $10,000? Okay. 10,127. And that brings our payment down to 389,000. Let's do that. Okay. 389,000 is our new balance. 389,873. Okay. Times 0.005. Our new mortgage payment would be $1,949 instead of $2,000. And we're getting equity. Now, in our program, most mortgages pay off in an average of 7 to 9 years. If this is a real estate investment property and you wanted to pay it off and your interest only period is a whole 10 years, is it conceivable that using our process that you could literally be done you could pay it all off within the 10-year frame? And that way, all your mortgage, all your rent payments are cash flow. None of the money goes to the mortgage. $0. What about that? Is that a possibility? Is that something you can consider? It's not something that I'm advocating. It's just we need more options instead of giving all of this money away to the bank. It shouldn't cost, in 2 years, it shouldn't cost $47,000 just to pay the mortgage down by $10,000. That is $57,000 all day. Why should we have to pay out $57,000 of our hard-earned money just to pay the mortgage down by 10 grand? Why should we? When we could pay a lot less interest. Okay, folks, listen, I need you to also take a look at this. Now, we've been here an hour and 31 minutes, okay? But I need to go over some other notes here that I have, okay? So let me see here. Let's see here. Why your mortgage, okay. Building equity. Building equity. All right, let's talk about it. By prepaying, okay, here's what it costs for your equity here. If you don't know what's really happening, here's what's happening. It costs $2,000 if you pay it the bank's way. It costs $2,000 to get $398.20 worth of equity. True or not true? True or not true? And the next month, to get $400 in additional equity, it will cost you $1,998 and a penny to get that equity. True or not true? How about building? Is there a way to build equity for free? I'm going to take a drink of water while you're thinking about it. Is there a way to build equity for free? You better know that it is. Okay. If I make a payment here, let's call it January, and then I take February's principal payment and prepay it, all of this money goes to principal. I'm paid down to here in 1 month. I skip over line 2 and go immediately to line 3. So I get to skip over this $1,998 and a penny and never have to pay it. My whole mortgage interest cost has been reduced by nearly $2,000 for giving them the $400 early. If I pay this money when the bank is not expecting it, I get the equity for free. If I give them the $4,900 early, okay, if I get the $4,900 early, I get most of this equity for free because all I have to do is pay and I'll save $21,000 in interest. I'll only pay $2,000 in interest instead of the $23,000 in interest that the bank wants. That's a $21,888.84 worth of interest savings by giving them that money up front. Why not get your equity for free? So, if you're a real estate investor, especially a newer real estate investor, you may not be interested in paying off this loan ever. Or at least in the first few years you're into real estate investing. Here's why. Because if it's possible to pay it off in 7 to 9 years, how quickly can you grow your equity to be able to cash out refi so that you can take cash out to buy more property, to put down payments on more property? You can cash out refi 10 to 15 years sooner using P.I.L.L methodology, using our opportunity cost calculator that optimizes your interest savings. Now, optimize interest savings means this: you can save the maximum amount of interest for every dollar you put on principal, not just some interest. Okay? Meaning, if you could save $6 in interest for every dollar, why would you want to save 3? 3 is a savings. That's a 300% return on your money. But if you could save $6 for every dollar, that would be better. That's a 600% return on your money. Why would you ever want to why would you ever want to get the least amount of interest savings with the same amount of money when you can get the most amount of interest savings for the right amount of money? And when you pay the right amount of money based on how much money you have to work with, here's what's happening. Our mindset is that I need to pay a lot more to pay the loan off early, when our mindset should be, if I'm optimizing, if I'm getting the biggest bang for my buck, I want to pay the least amount of money that I have available to get the biggest savings per dollar. That's how we do everything else. When we buy gasoline, we want to spend the least amount of our money so that we can get the best gas mileage. Okay? When I go to the grocery store, I want to come out with as many carts of groceries as I can for the dollar that I have to spend. Okay? That's what we're talking about, folks. I want to get more for less. But when it comes to mortgages, we're taught, or any other loan, we want to throw as much money at it as we can. And when we do that, we're actually saving less per dollar. Well, Don, don't I pay the loan off faster? Yeah, you do. It's faster than doing nothing. But why do you not want to throw as much money at this loan as possible? Here's why. The more money you throw at this loan, if you put too much on, you violate the law of diminished return. What does that mean? You want to maximize how much interest you can save per dollar. Once you reach maximum of interest savings per dollar, you want to stop putting money towards principal. Okay, watch this. In the beginning, on this loan, it takes about $400 to kill nearly $2,000 in interest. But the deeper you get into this loan, watch this. It takes $1,169.42 to kill $1,200 worth of interest. It costs more to eliminate less. The bankers know that. So even though you're trying your best to pay off this loan faster, here's what you're not doing. You're not calculating what is the least amount to pay to maximize interest earnings so that you can stop putting money towards debt reduction and take the rest of your money and put it towards wealth creation. One more time. Stop putting money towards debt reduction once you've reached maximum savings, and take the rest of the money and put it towards wealth creation in some sort of investment. I got a guy here in Huntsville. He uses our program, and he's paying off his mortgage. I mean, he's making a lot more money now. And when he puts all that money into the program says you can be out of debt on the last $263,000 that you owe us. That's what the bank says, that you owe the bank. All right. Last $263,000, he can have it paid off in 3.5 years and only pay $16,000 more interest to do that. He was very excited about the prospect. I told him he's paying off the mortgage too fast and he's not paying enough interest. Totally shocked him. Why not? Why not do that? I said, well, Let's tell the program this. We put the because the program will allow you to make changes in it. So tell the program you're making $2,000 a month less. He did, and he got new results. Now he's going to be out of debt in 6.5 years, not 3.5. He's going to pay $20,000 in interest and not 16. He says, why would I do that? I'm paying more interest and I'm taking 6.5 years to get out of debt, not 3.5. I said, well, what would you have to do to get out of debt in 3.5? He says, I would have to put that $2,000 a month back in for 3.5 years. I said, he says, yeah. I said, let's count it up. Let's count the cost. 3 years, that's 36 months. And another half year, that's 6 more months. That's 42 months. 42 months times $2,000 a month going towards debt reduction. That's 84 grand. And remember from the top of the show, our goal is not to pay the loan off fast, it's to pay it off cheap. So how much interest are you saving by doing that? He can pay off, he can, if he stays where I told him to stay, he's going to pay $20,000 in interest. To do what he wants to do, he's going to pay $16,000 in interest, which means he's got to give the bank an extra $84,000 towards debt reduction just to save $4,000 in interest. Now you tell me, ladies and gentlemen, is it worth to pay 84 grand just to save $4,000 in interest? Or should he be taking his 84 grand and investing it somewhere else? There's a point at which you need to stop prepaying any loan and take that money and invest it. Who's going to help you to figure all of that out and when, especially if you have several loans? The average family has 13 different debts. The average family is paying 35 to 39% of their take-home pay on interest alone. What is the right amount to pay? Which is the right loan to pay it to? Which is now we're getting into looking at all of the loans, looking at all of the interest rates, looking at all the payment dates, looking at all the money you have available, and finding out how computers figure all of this out. Computers don't move dollars, they move pennies. 1 penny on every loan, on every day, on every month to figure out what your maximum interest savings can be per dollar until it stops at the right amount of pennies. That's how computers work, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have, we're going to make this abundantly clear and then I've got to go. Okay. Here is why most people fight against this thing, because they don't understand the variables involved. We have identified at least 10 different variables when it comes to lending. I won't have time to go over each and every one, but just a few of them. But let me put this on your screen. Okay. 10 variables. There it is. P.I.L.L Method International. The first variable, payment frequency and structure. Understanding when and how you receive your income is crucial for timing your prepayments correctly to align with your cash flow. Your cash flow is different from your neighbors. It's different from your cousin. It's different from your friend. You need a plan that looks at your cash flow when it comes in and when it makes sense for you to prepay, looking at payment frequency and structure. That's one more variable you have to think about. What about variable number 2, income amount? The amount of money you earn dictates how much you can realistically divert towards debt repayment without compromising your financial stability. Some people are paying way too much too early and leave themselves cash poor. Have you seen it? I've seen it. People trying to get out of debt leave themselves cash poor because they're trying to throw all their money at the debt. Dave Ramsey puts you in this mode of thinking. Okay? Income amount. Number 3, loan structure. Now, each loan specific terms. Each loan, if you have 13 different debts, that's 13 different loan structures that need to be studied. We've been told it's simple. Just pay off the smallest one first, or pay the one with the highest interest rate first. But guess what it doesn't take into account? How much each one costs. Figuring out the interest cost on each loan is much more difficult and much more time consuming. And that's why we're taught heuristics or a rule of thumb to figure out what to do, because it's quick and easy, but it costs you way more money not to think about which loan is costing me the most money and what is the best way to save money. Oh my gosh. Each loan specific terms, including interest rates, balance due, affect how beneficial extra payments can be. Number 4, discretionary funds. The amount of money left after each essential expenses varies month to month, affecting your ability to make extra payments. You see, if we try to come up with a spreadsheet type of formula where we're telling the program we're going to put an extra $500 or an extra $1,000 on debt or an extra $200 on debt every single month, that doesn't take into account emergencies and when things go wrong. What happens when your expenses are way more this month than you ever thought they could be due to emergencies? Now you can't put that money on the debt because you don't have it to put on the debt because you spend it for this month. That's why spreadsheets blow up every time there's an emergency. And people just go away from that program altogether. Okay, discretionary funds. Okay, number 5, optimal timing and amount. Determining the most effective time and the amount of prepayments, which means if you're trying to, the effective time, there's 12 months in a year. Which month do I do this in? There's approximately 30 days in each month. Which day of the month do I do it on? When I take a look at how much money I have available, I have thousands upon thousands of pennies available that I could put on the debt. How many pennies do I put in the right month on the right day of the month? Do you see how complicated it starts to get? If I have 5 variables, ladies and gentlemen, 5 variables, let me put this on the screen. 5 variables. That is 5 exclamation point. Okay, that's called factorial math. 5 exclamation point means there's 120 ways to view these variables. Which one do I do first? Which one do I do second? Which ones do I avoid? Which ones do I add in? If there's 120 different things to think about, there is a certain sequence or a certain methodology out of the 120 I need to follow to maximize interest savings. How do I do that if I have 120 different variables to think about? Well, I've only identified 5 variables. There's 120. We have 10. What is 10 factorial? 10 exclamation point, 10 factorial, that's 3,628,800 different permutations. 3,628,800. If you had a bookshelf, now I have got a video on this that we're adding to our course that's coming up, our challenge that's coming up, where we're going to be teaching you how to become an interest cancellation expert, how you can understand this. But if you have a bookshelf with 10 books on it, and I'm telling you, your job for the foreseeable future, that's all you have to do, is arrange all of these books in every conceivable position. Book number 1, book number 2, book number 3, all the way to 10. And now let's rearrange the books so they're not in that same order. If you were to arrange these books in every conceivable order, it would be 3,628,800 different configuration of these books. It would take you over 100 years if you worked 8 hours a day to arrange that bookshelf. That's how many different choices there are when it comes to figuring out what is the best way to handle your debt. Everybody is telling you it's simple and it's easy, and all you have to do is this. And every time you don't optimize, the bank makes even more money. I'm going to go through the rest of these, and then we're going to be done for the day, ladies and gentlemen. The number of loans, managing, okay, optimal timing, number of loans, managing multiple loans requires an understanding of how each contributes to your overall financial burden. Prioritizing which loans to pay down first based on factors like interest rate and the principal amount is crucial. 7, tracking interest cost changes. Oh my gosh. When we discovered this one, as you pay down loans, the interest costs dramatically change. Meaning, as I pay down the loan, if I have 10 different loans, and let's say I pick the right one that costs me the most. If I focus on that, I could pay it down so much that it's no longer the most expensive. Should I continue to prepay on that one when it's no longer the most expensive, or should I change to another loan? What a novel idea. If I'm using the debt snowball, ladies and gentlemen, the debt snowball pays down whichever loan I pick, pays down that loan to 0, and then I switch to another loan. Pay that loan down to 0, and then I switch to another loan, and the mortgage is last. If I'm using the debt snowball, like Dave Ramsey says. By doing this, as you pay down loans, the interest costs dramatically change. The P.I.L.L method tracks these changes and adjusts focus from one loan to another, optimizing where your money should go next to maximize interest savings. You shouldn't pay down the loan all the way to 0 before you change to another loan that's more expensive to operate. When you stop to think about it, it only makes sense. If one loan costing you $1,000 a month, okay, shouldn't you, and that's the most expensive, as you're paying down on it, pretty soon it's going to get to $700, $600, $500 a month in interest. What if that $500 a month is less than the one that's costing you $600 or $700 or $800 a month? Shouldn't you change over to that loan? Shouldn't you keep changing according to how much interest each loan is costing you and attack the loans that way? Won't you save more interest if you're doing that? Who has time to try to figure all of that out? 3.6 million different permutations figured out for you in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds tells you exactly what to do and when. Do you see what we're talking about here? Cash management. Number 8, cash management. Balancing the interest saved through loan prepayments with the potential interest earned from investments is crucial. Cash management and investment strategies. We talked about that. How much of your money should go towards debt reduction, and how much of the money that you already have should start going towards wealth creation. Now we're talking about a whole new set of math problems called critical point analysis. What is the critical point? I mean, in dollars and cents, all the way to the penny, that I need to stop putting money towards debt reduction and take the rest of my pennies and put them towards wealth creation. What is that magic number? Without an algorithm specifically designed to come up with that number for you, you're going to make mistakes all the time. because we're going to use mental accounting, and mental accounting is not sufficient enough to help us to save the maximum amount of money and to use our money to make money. You see, folks, if you pay way too much interest over here or take too much of your money to cancel interest, you lose the opportunity for long-term earnings with compound interest. You want to start as soon as possible making compound interest to get ready for your life after work, when you want to retire. When is that? When do you hit that magic number? When your money makes so much money for you that it replaces your income by several times. Now your money is working and you're not. How soon do you want to get there? That's what this is all about. If you spend the money in a way that is not efficient, you make it impossible for that money to make money for you. And that's what this thing is all about. Stop throwing away generational wealth and figure out how you can take that money and invest it for your family. Wow. Potential balancing the interest saved through loan prepayments with the potential interest earned from investments is crucial. This helps decide whether to prepay debt or invest surplus funds for a higher return. That's just 1 out of 10. Here's number 9, emergency funds and fungibility of money. This one is huge, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot of people make a mistake here. Considering the fungibility of money, that means how money is interchangeable, okay? Looking at all of your funds. Considering the fungibility of money, it may be more cost-effective to use credit for emergencies rather than keeping a large amount of idle cash in low-yield accounts. This approach can free up funds for reducing high-cost debt. Can you imagine someone talking about using credit or credit cards for emergencies rather than for saving up cash for that purpose? Called sinking funds? Thousands of dollars sitting in the bank, molding away, making 1/10 of 1%, when I could be taking that money and killing thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of interest. And I can use my credit card to pay for my emergency, add my credit card to the program, and the program manages how much interest I pay on that credit card. Oh my gosh. Think about that for a minute. Now, we just keep adding point after point after point. This is how difficult it is to manage what you're doing. Okay. And number 10, what we spent so much time on, behavioral economics and financial decision making. This is the last point we're making today. Okay. Oh, somebody raised their hand. I'm sorry. Joe, I'm trying to invite you up to speak because you had your hand raised. If you're still here, come on up. Joe, I didn't see when you had your hand raised. Come on up, Joe. Okay. All right. So here's the last one, folks. Behavioral economics and financial decision making. Understanding the impact of behavioral economics, such as loss aversion, helps us design interventions that encourage more rational financial behaviors. You see, when you study when you study behavioral economics, we find out that human beings make irrational financial decisions, but we think it's logical. Therefore, we try to simplify how we make those decisions. Okay, Joe, what did you have for me today, sir? I'm sorry I didn't see your hand raised. Go ahead and hit that mic unmute in the lower right-hand corner.
Sorry about that.
Yes, Joe.
I just want to let you know I'm blind and can't see what you're doing on the screen.
Yes.
And I just wanted to give you one piece of advice.
Yes, sir.
When you're reading out the lines for the amortization schedule,
Yes.
you might tell people what line you're on. And that way, you know, if you can't see what the screen says, they can still follow along.
Yes.
Like you would say, line 1 is this interest and principal payment, and then you go to, you know, line 5 or whatever. That might help you in your presentation. And then I just wanted to say, you're doing a great job. I love a fellow disabled person getting over on the man. We need more people like you. And yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I'm going to watch more of what you have to say.
Joe, that is a great suggestion, and we're going to start implementing that right away. Did you hear that, folks? All right. So when we're doing this presentation, we're going to try very hard to call out which line we're on the amortization schedule. Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay. All right. So finishing up number 10, ladies and gentlemen. These 10 variables, okay? These 10 variables collectively guide, Joe, if you want mute you. I'm going to mute the mic for you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, not a problem. All right. Where is it?
Speech on. Phone call with plus 1720551.
Let me see here.
Phone call with plus. Clubhouse. Action. Clubhouse.
I got to try to mute everybody.
Clubhouse. App switcher. Clubhouse. Action.
There's a way to do this.
Clubhouse. Dismiss button. Toggle mute button.
Remove from room. Okay, I don't know how to do this. There you go. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. All right, Joe, thank you very much for that suggestion. We're finishing up here. These 10 variables collectively guide the development and execution of a tailored financial strategy using the P.I.L.L method, ensuring that every aspect of an individual's financial profile is considered for optimal debt reduction and wealth accumulation. Effectively managing your debt through optimized prepayments isn't as simple as just paying extra when you have spare cash. To truly maximize the interest savings per dollar applied, we must consider several personal financial factors: your payment schedule, the size and timing of your income, the specific terms of your loans, and the variability of your monthly your monthly discretionary funds. These elements require us to perform detailed factorial math to determine the optimal amount to prepay, the right debt to target, the precise timing of these payments. This isn't just about making extra payments. It's about making strategic payments that are timed perfectly to coincide with your financial cycle, sometimes planning 2 or 3 months in advance to ensure we're capitalizing on the right financial movement. This level of precision helps us avoid the law of diminishing returns, ensuring every dollar you invest in debt repayment works its hardest for you. The P.I.L.L method's AI-powered opportunity cost calculator is specifically designed to navigate these complexities, providing tailored recommendations that align with your unique financial situation, helping you reduce your debt faster and more efficiently than traditional methods. Folks, we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back and wrap it all up. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Here is Dr. Eric Thomas talking about the P.I.L.L method.
Listen to me, y'all. But one of his mentees took us through one of their programs, and I paid off my mortgage. But guess what happened? My marriage went to a whole nother level. And you know why? Because my wife is a security freak. And even when I blew up, my wife would be like, "Oh, you blew up, but how long is you gonna keep making this kind of money?" I was like, "I don't know, forever." She's like, "You sure?" Because I'm gonna keep my license as a nurse just in case you don't. So when I paid the house off, my boy was like, "You ain't gotta do that, you can do this." But when I paid the house off using that program, It took the stress level all the way down for my wife because we no longer had a mortgage. Does that make sense? That thing that was coming every month, that was getting on her nerves, we didn't have that no more. And so she was at rest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of here. So I want to thank you for spending this time with us today. I do hope and pray that this has been educational, that you understand why people would fight against this idea, because these are the only ideas we've been given since 1936. And because of that, we try to make the best decision we can based on the information that's been provided. We're dedicating ourselves to make sure that you get the best financial information available so that you can borrow money at a discount. Keep your money from giving it to the investors and invest that money in your future. Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here. Continue to watch our program. Okay. Rainey says, good stuff. Good stuff. Listen, she says good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Rainey. Lacey, I appreciate you for being here today. Okay, folks. We're going to be back here on Friday with a replay, so don't miss the replays. But we're live twice a week on Wednesdays and on we're live on Wednesdays and Monday nights. We're starting a Monday night show. So start telling people about our Monday night show, where we're going to be live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, also on Clubhouse, but not in this room. We're going to be in our own room, the P.I.L.L Method room. So look for us there on Clubhouse on Monday nights at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central p.m. That's our nighttime show. So, folks, thank you so very much for being here. We are going to get out of here. And if you have any ideas, okay, go to pillmethod.com. I'm sorry. Go to ice10k.com or ceodon.com, ceodon.com, and go to my card and look us up. Send us information, send us show ideas if you want to see something on this. But in the meantime, don't forget your own savings report. We're not charging you anything for it, ladies and gentlemen. Get your own savings report. So we're going to put it up here, ceodon.com. All right. There we go. CEO Don. All right. And scroll down underneath ET's picture and get your own savings and earnings report. And you can know the month, day, and year you could be debt free. All right. The month, day, and year you could be debt free and how much interest you could save and how much money that saved interest can make for you over time, instead of giving it to the bank so that they can invest your money. It's time out for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's time that we start using debt to create wealth. All right. So we're going to get out of here and we'll see you next time. There it is, our outro music. All right. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.